August 3rd, 2023 today. Welcome to Axiom News Live, where every Thursday we engage strengths to catalyze change. Here we start with what is strong rather than what is wrong, to lift up the stories of those people in the world whose work we've become connected to and care about. I'm your host, Peter Pula. Today our co-host is Sean Loney of Encompass Co-op. He's also a member of the Axiom News Media Collaborative. We are joined today by Cathy Albro. Cathy is chair of the Michigan Democratic Party Rural Caucus, and she is bringing community members together in a new initiative across party lines through conversation to activate the common good, an interest we all share. We are also joined by Lucas Stewart. Lucas is Executive Director of The Wrench in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where he is expanding the conversation about active transportation and its relationship to the structure of communities, health, and well-being. Welcome to each of you. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
We always like to start a little bit with why it was that you said yes to our invitation. Sean, I'll ask you again. You've been a co-host on a number of the calls now, and every time I love to hear your answer. So maybe we'll begin with you again. Why did you choose to come on as co-host today in particular? From your cottage, by the looks of things.
Yes, I'm at the cottage today, Peter, in northwestern Ontario. And I'll note that you do ask me the same question every time, but did you notice I give you a different answer every time?
That's why I like to ask.
So in reflecting upon this question, I just want our viewers to know how optimistic I am about the future and how possible solutions are. And I love how you say, Peter, and lean into that Axiom News mantra that we all want to make the world we wish to live in. And so I'm excited for these two guests today. Lucas and I have worked together for some time in different capacities, and he's bringing us a cycling perspective. He's our first guest with Axiom News Live to kind of push into that realm of infrastructure and how exciting commuting can be that way. So I'm looking forward to connecting. And Cathy, we haven't met before, but super cool that you're able to join us, and looking forward to the conversation.
Me too.
All right. Why don't we go to you, Cathy? What was it that compelled you to say yes to joining us? Because we've only just met, like within the last couple of days.
I know. Well, Peter and I have been talking lately quite a bit in the last few weeks about what I'm doing, and then I'm also reviewing a draft of his new book.
That's Peter Block here.
Yes,
naming
Peter
there.
Block.
Yeah, Peter Block,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think he's the one that recommended that you invite me on your show. And so actually just to answer the question in a short way, is that I saw this as a great opportunity to connect with people to help me understand more about what's going on in this world of the common good, and also to share my experiences so that others that may be in the same boat as me might get some ideas.
Right on. Okay. Thank you, Cathy. And Lucas, why yes?
It's a pleasure to be chatting with you guys again. The reason I was excited to be on today is and Sean, I want to just reference a couple of moments you and I have had in the past where we've had just these like light bulb moments go off. For us, we've been like wrestling with like a bunch of endemic, sticky, complicated issues, things that we're facing that like really drive us nuts and are and then we have these like just points of realization. And so I'm happy to bring this point of realization that I've had around cycling.
All right.
And what it means for what it's meant for me and what it means for my daughter and what I hope it can mean for our cities and how we relate to each other. Yeah. So I'm happy to be here to share that experience and bring some of that newfound knowledge that I have gained It's not new for other people, but it's like new for me.
It's new for you. All right. So this
Yeah.
just in sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Got it. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I shared with each of you, but I'll share with our viewers and listeners too that our format is that we'll spend 15 or 20 minutes exploring Cathy's current work in the world with a view to what's unfolding and what she might like from community as she goes forward. And the three of us will be attentive to that work for 15 or 20 minutes. Then we'll take a really, really quick break, and then we'll shift our focus of attention to Lucas. But we're all going to stay in the stream together so that if conversation starts to burblate between the four of us, that we welcome those sort of generative and inquiring thoughts into the space. All right. So with that, we'll move along to Cathy. And I mean, I introduced you as the Michigan Democratic Party Rural Caucus Chair, which is a mouthful, but I managed to get it out twice now. But I understand that you're also engaged in, what did you call it? The Rural Michigan Action Alliance. And I get the sense that you'd mentioned Peter Block earlier. He has mentioned you to me a number of times, and so I get the sense that your work is very much important to him. But I understand also that some of his work is important to you. So maybe, given that that Peter Block is our connection point, maybe we can speak. Can you speak into what it is you're finding in Peter's work that is being of use to you in your wider work in the world?
Sure. Well, I started out my career as a teacher. I taught first grade mostly, and um, I think I was a different kind of a teacher, and I don't see those teachers out there so much today. But giving children choices and um, giving them as much time to speak in the classroom as the teacher does. And then I ended up working with teachers for about 15 years. To help them build their curriculum and their pedagogy around those same ideas. So around 2008, maybe, I read Peter's book, Community, seeking more information about the idea of working for the common good, even though at that time I really didn't think of it as that. But, starting with children, because I think that once they see how fulfilling it is to be working together in community and working for each other, with each other, it wouldn't be so hard to change minds when they're adults. So I really want to focus on education as well and strategies that teachers use. And unfortunately, I think I'm the only one in the United States right now in this group, but so I'll speak for what I see around this country.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that education is shifting to be, the opposite of what we want to see, with children not being allowed to be curious, with a growth mindset. And at least in most schools, there are those schools that probably are refusing to abide by the curriculum mandates that some states are mandating. But so anyway, just for an example, today our grandchildren are visiting us. We get them 5 days a year for a short time, but we sat around the table this morning. It was the first day, and Logan, who's 11, and Peyton, who's 9, ran the whole meeting. Logan was the convener, and Peyton was the note taker, and to make a list of all the things they wanted to do in the 5 days we have together. So, and then we talked about when we could fit all those things in. So that's the type of thing that I think children need to have experience doing, and the adults need to be probably taught how to allow that to happen. So anyway, with Peter's book, I actually owned for 30 years a business called Creative Learning. And it grew more and more to be for adults rather than children only. And we had space for conversation, for people to find references like Peter's book, book clubs and that kind of thing. And so I was looking at that time on how to work within the community to bring that about. So that's how I got started with Peter. And then a lot of things happened in 2008, and we had to file for bankruptcy, and a lot of things like that. So now come 2018, I ran for Congress in Michigan and did not win, but it opened my eyes, and I really hadn't been very, one party or the other. I leaned more definitely for the people, but I
Mm,
hadn't been a strong Democrat, but I had to choose a party to run. So then I became involved in the Democratic Party, mostly in rural areas where I saw there was a real need to expand the network, and contacted Peter then at that time, probably a couple years, 3 years ago maybe, and he found out that he had updated his book, and we got a group together, and he provided 3 sessions on how to work in your own community, and it was during COVID, and so I think it was really hard for people to get started at that time. So we're in the process now of rebooting it, and we really feel like the the political parties in the states, that whole thing doesn't work, because no matter, I've experienced, I also ran for the state house last year, and I live in a very, very Republican area, that even if they agree with you, which a lot of people did when I talked to them individually, they still vote for Republicans because that's how they've always done it. So
mm.
I really see that this, working with the common good, making that the priority when making decisions and around conversation, that's the way that we're finally going to be able to turn things around here.
Mm. And something that we sort of touched on in the green room is this conversation about states versus community rights, and I guess there's also a question of how do we build resilience at the community level, and I presume that's the sort of thing that you're looking to do with the new organization, the Rural Michigan Action
Action.
Alliance. Is that right?
Yes, yes. We ended up having a summit last April in the Upper Peninsula, and I expected 30, 40 people to show up, and we had to cut it off at 150, I believe. Um,
What
we
was the
had
invitation like? What were you inviting people into?
just to learn from each other mostly. That was it was a day and a half, and it was mostly learning from each other. We still had Michael Moore was one of our speakers, and Debbie Stabenow, Senator Debbie Stabenow, and a few, we had others. Jim Purvis, who wrote the book Dems 101, was another one. But most of the day was about learning from each other. We set up 4 different opportunities during the day for people we had, facilitators, conveners of each group and each topic, but then people chose, and then it was more conversational.
All right, so you got 4 times the number of people you were expecting.
Yes, and so that gave us the momentum and the idea that we really needed to start a nonpartisan group around this idea of learning from each other and building community.
So
So what's
Kathy,
it been
here
for?
at, well, sorry, I just want to jump in
Go
here,
ahead, Sean.
Peter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here at Axiom, we're pretty firm believers in talking to people's values rather than their ideologies. And wondered if you could reference your work in the context of that. It sounds to me like you don't go to a Republican voter and saying that they're wrong.
No.
You engage them as humans. How does that impact your work?
Well, we start out by asking a question, not trying to influence them or talk to them about our ideas, but what's most important to you? What do you think would improve the community? What are you most proud of in your community? Opening it up that way, it's very non-threatening. It's an invitation for them to talk about whatever they want. And if the conversation happens to get around to something that we wanted to bring up, that's great. But sometimes most of the time, we go with whatever they're talking about and what's important to them.
I'm curious, do you have to sort of say that what you're working on is nonpartisan, or is it just nonpartisan? So, like, do you begin with a declaration about crossing those lines, or is that just sort
Oh,
of in the
um,
backdrop?
we usually don't even mention that we're from a political party.
Right,
We,
right.
we talk about, we're a member of the community, or I always, my district was huge, 6 counties, but I always took someone from the neighborhood with me. So we could say, I'm your neighbor. Um, and most of the time they even knew them. So that's the way to get started, I think. But I love the idea of everybody has equal worth and value in the group. It's not the person running for office. It's not the person who was elected for office. It's you. It's
Mm-hmm. Here. So the Rural Michigan Action Alliance, can you say a little bit about how that's come together? Maybe who some of the
Mhm,
torchbearers are,
mhm.
what some of the surprises in the early stages have been?
Well, we've been writing our bylaws. Those are pretty much confirmed, and they're basic values that we hold about the um, common good, that everybody is equal and has the right to participate, and that our common good is public education for everyone. We have listed some things: care for our environment and climate change, um, equal rights, um, all of those things, economic security and
Inclusion.
inclusion, job
Yeah.
wages, that kind of thing. We support unions. So we've been writing the bylaws. We have those values. Now we're working on what kinds of projects do we want are most important to us, and we're gathering members that have the same beliefs. So one of the projects we're working on, and this is what grabbed Peter's attention because he's on our email list, is that we're holding a session next Tuesday night. United Today, Stronger Tomorrow is the national group that is convening. Well, we're hosting it, but they're actually going to be the presenters. But it's about, in the United States, there are many, many grants available for rural communities now
Okay.
to strengthen their communities in many different ways. And because of some of the laws that were passed, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, and those kinds of things. So in rural communities, mostly people don't know what grants are available, how to access them, or how to write proposals. So what we want to do through this meeting is learn more about what's available and how do people go about applying. And we have over 100 people registered for this meeting now throughout the state of Michigan.
And when's that happening?
That's next Tuesday night, the 8th at 7 p.m.
And can people still find themselves on the
I could
RSVP list?
I could send you a link. Yes, I'd
All
be
right,
happy to do
wonderful.
that.
Okay.
And you can share it if you'd like. But what Peter suggested was, why not use this opportunity to build community? So the next time I sent the note out about the meeting, which was yesterday, the first paragraph started out, well, this would be a great way for you to work with your neighbors and build community. And so by putting it that way, rather than, hey, do you want a grant?
Right.
Let's go through the process of working together. That's how we build community and make our community stronger. So the grant is just a tool that you can use to do the work, but most of the work is what you're going to be doing. And so,
So you put some of the community connection
right.
ahead of coming to tasks, I guess.
Yes, yes, yeah. By starting out saying, well, for the people that are coming to this meeting, they'll have the knowledge about the grants, but then we want to launch them back into their communities to say, hey, let's come together and figure out what we want for our community that will make it better. And so it would be a good, some of the people that went through Peter's first sessions kind of said, well, I don't know, it was COVID anyway, but I'm not sure how to convene something like this.
Right.
We have people fighting against each other right now, and I'm not sure we're going to get anybody other than strong Democrats to come to a meeting like that. So this is a way that maybe we can get more interest and more people to want to start something in their community, a discussion.
So in terms of those conversations, what can people expect? I know that the way Peter holds small groups, we're very often in very small group conversations. We meet all kinds of strangers. We sit with provocative questions that enliven our wishes and our will. Is that the sort of thing that people can
Yes,
expect? Or yeah,
yes. And you can imagine that this probably many people, many adults in these communities have never participated in any kind of thing like this. So this will be new for a lot of people. Some people will be a little scared, I think, and but we need to make people feel the invitation is important, and people feel welcome, and that nothing they say will be wrong, that everything will be accepted and that they have the choice to move on or to stay. And but when you're talking about the good of the community, there's so much that can be discussed. It doesn't have to be a threatening conversation. And then maybe there's 4 or 5 different ideas, then you can split up into those groups and talk about each idea and then
and
come together.
is your notion those ideas will arise out of the conversations between community members, or have you got them sort of preset?
I don't think we've gone that far yet, but
Right.
that would be our next step, that we start working with the people at the meeting next Tuesday night, or those that they would like to include, and do some type of a Zoom training on how to be a convener and maybe how to get this started in their communities.
Right on. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you, what are some of the things that you think might be necessary for the event to go as wonderfully well as it possibly could?
Well, the invitation, making sure that everybody feels welcome and that they understand how the meeting will run, and probably food and drink
Right.
is important. The venue is important, I think, to make sure that it's a welcoming place, and also that people can meet in small groups and come back together in a large group off and on, and then change groups if they need to. So some spaces are not set up for that, others
Right.
are. So,
So how the room's set up. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Cathy, what kind of impact would you like to see your group have on Michigan in 5 or 10 years? If you're wildly successful, what would you feel good about in terms of making progress?
Well, I think that, if this is happening in half of the rural communities in the state, I think it's going to catch on when people know how successful it is and how much fun it is to meet new people and build relationships with each other rather than fighting. I mean, right now in so many rural communities, people don't talk to each other. And but if you come up with some common ideas on things you can agree on, that's what you focus on. So I think that it will spread, but it will take a while. We need, if we start with 10 communities this year that want to do this, that would be a success in my eyes. And you know, we'll go from there. We don't know what's going to happen.
So is your idea, Cathy, to visit to host something like the summit or the gathering you're hosting on Tuesday in 10 communities? Will you return to those communities, or will you keep the conversation going somehow, or do you have to wait and see what happens in the first rounds?
I think you have to wait and see what happens, but we definitely don't want it to die. Once you have the momentum, there are so many other things that once people know the process, you don't need money then, to get you to
Mm,
work together. You can do a lot of things without money, just with people power. So
with the
I
people
think
who show up and the materials at hand.
yeah, I think it's gathering people, having them live the process and the experience, and then I think they'll be interested in staying involved, most people, and tell their friends.
I really love this, Cathy, and for Canadian, or we have listeners from the UK as well. It's so interesting to watch American politics these days, and it is so remarkably divided. And today's the day the president is being indicted and the country is remarkably split. And here you are in rural Michigan, just sort of setting all that aside and just saying, let's meet as people around some things that we can all agree upon. And that's over in the background somewhere, but we're not going to let that separate us. So I'm feeling excited to connect with you again at some point and see what kind of progress you're making, so the rest of us can learn about how you're pulling people together rather than tearing them apart.
Yep. And I think that we will document it with video too, so that if anybody wants to do something similar, they can see the process that we used as well.
Wonderful. I have maybe one more question, Cathy, and it's around asks you might have to the community. I mean, these kinds of events are so there's such wonderful opportunities to be co-produced and to invite people's gifts and the variety of things that people have to bring. They might not even know that they have to bring, or might even know that you'd like to have show up. So have you got a sense for some of the things that you might like, want, or need to make either this event on Tuesday or some of the ones in the other communities really come alive?
For next Tuesday, we are going to be meeting with the presenters to help them understand the direction that we want this to go in after.
In the shape of things.
Yes, yeah. So I'm looking at what do we need to do next after Tuesday. We're going to have people very excited from all over the state, really, and we've made it a point to say this is not a Democratic thing. This is little d Democratic thing, and hopefully, I've had people contact me from library or that are involved with libraries, or they want to start a swimming pool in their community, building a swimming pool, those types of things. I think every community is different, so it's not going to be a cookie cutter approach. It's going to have to be, people from the community that actually want this to work, that work together and use us more as a springboard or a way to get ideas.
It sounds very much like what you're looking for is to enable and ennoble folks to create the communities they want to create, rather than coming up with ideas for other people to do.
Right. I mean, that's the model anyway.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Cathy. We'll take a quick break now and we'll grab our water, whatever we need to do, and then we'll return to our second segment. Thank you very much, Cathy, for sharing with us what you're up to. What you're doing is a big part of, like I said, enabling and ennobling all of us to create the communities we want to live into. So these are stories that we really want to track with and lift up. So thank you very much for taking that time, Cathy. All right, Yvonne, you want to roll our short interlude, and then we'll come back and we'll explore a few things with Lucas's work in the world.
If you would like to experience genuine connection with others, being heard, patience, levity, and laughter, warmth, light, smiles, new, deepening, and healing relationships, then cultivate community with us. Coined by participants as a fortnightly feast for the soul, these 90-minute gatherings hosted by Axiom News offer a weaving of small group dialogue led by carefully crafted questions, followed by light, whole group reflection. Each dialogue round deepens connection and enlivens possibility between and amongst those who participate. All are welcome. Learn more and RSVP for our next gathering by visiting the Events tab in A New Commons, our sister initiative in Mighty Networks, at anewcommons.mn.co/events.
to admit, Cathy, that ad sounds like something that could be for the event you're hosting on Tuesday.
Yes.
All right. Too funny. All right, Lucas, welcome. I find sometimes that you have ideas that strike me as kind of funny, Lucas. So we're going to spend a little time on some of those funny ideas. But let's start with maybe, I think as long as I've known you, cycling's been important to you. Can we start with why?
Yeah, sure. Well, to be honest, it just makes me feel good. like that's how it started. It just made me feel good. And I during COVID, when we were locked down, I forgot that I liked biking. And then I realized I hadn't been outside in like 9 months. And I missed the sun, and then I put a bike back into my life, and I just immediately felt better. Like, and to this day, you know, when I ride, if I get a ride in, and it doesn't matter the temperature, just I get out, I feel like 10% better, which is straight up very good. Things just kind of like they got kind of real, you know. For me, my daughter's 5. This happens this happens to people when they have children, is they just start like thinking about things differently. And so I have my daughter's 5, and so my view of how the world is, and what's going on and where it's headed, has like developed some urgency to it. And so I look around at the things, like the major issues that she's going to face, like straight up, like housing's expensive. Like we got an affordability crisis going on in every major center, and this is fairly common across the states as well. Being able to just afford things, that kind of like set in before even this latest bout of inflation kicked in. I have a fund, like a separate little pot of money I pay into every month, that is like a down payment, you know, to help her out later on when she's ready to have a place of her own. In addition to like a college or university fund. And on top of that, like the world's kind of on fire, you know, like it's on fire. And so when I am wrestling with these things, like I'm riding around on my bike wrestling with these issues, and I'm like, holy crap, like this bicycle is part of that solution. And it was one of those light bulb moments that I just realized that the thing was staring me in the face the whole time. That's happened to me. That's happened to me 2 or 3 other times in my life, where like something will just click, and I realized that we've been looking at the thing. We just need to look at it slightly differently, and then it just clicks in. So for me, I have come to value cycling as like straight up good for my mental health. Makes me feel better. I mean, it improves my mood. I feel like I got a $4 an hour raise, you know, because there was a point where we were a 2-car family, and now we're a 1-car family, and that's real money, you know. And so we don't have that expense anymore of a second car, and so that's like a pocketbook, real money for our family, and not filling up gas every month or every other couple of weeks. And like, it's when I put like 80 liters of fuel into my car and then just like light it on fire, Like if you think about, that's like half a bathtub worth of, and you just like fill it up and then light it on fire, like, and repeat every 2 weeks. Like that's a crazy thing that we do on a regular basis. So and it's a very practical way to get around. So I've come to appreciate those things, and it's been so impactful. The mental health stuff, the mood, and the money. Like we got environmental problems long term, but those are very immediate, practical things that I want for my coworkers, and I want those things for my family and my friends.
Well, that was one of those sort of funny ideas I had mentioned when we spoke yesterday, Lucas, to prepare for today. You sort of indicated that a second vehicle is $600 or $700 a month, and you link that directly to housing affordability.
Yeah.
And then, yet, if our cities aren't structured in such a way to make it possible to make use of a bicycle, then the way the cities are structured is a housing affordability problem by extension of, if I need a car, I haven't got the money, so on and so forth. And to me, those are very sort of interesting. You've just told a story about your relationship with cycling and bikes that, well, it's not just a bike at all, is it?
It's, so you can go down. I invite all of us listening to like have a peek down this particular rabbit hole that is like urban design, and just from a systemic perspective, how having built a car dependent city or way of living impoverishes everybody. I mean, we in our city, Winnipeg, we were involved in the election, or the mayoral election. And so having spent a bunch of time thinking about like what to do that would be good for our city, making it so that the general population had the option of having safe, reliable, and convenient alternatives for getting around that didn't involve a car is probably like the biggest social boon that we could give to that kind of population all at once, right? And just the after tax dollar infusion into households is amazing. We have very we don't have a strong national daycare program in Canada, right? The government helps out. They'll send you $200 a month, right? If you qualify for that. Consistently having just extra between $400 and $800 a month in your after tax dollars in your bank account every month for all the households who chose to do that is incredible. It's hard to think of any other program that would do that.
I think it's really refreshing, Lucas, that you're coming at cycling. You have mentioned environmental benefits, but only so briefly. It's important, but what you really want other riders to know is the benefits to mental health, and also the financial benefits. What, other than that, how do we convince more people to be cycling? Is it just a matter of more cycling infrastructure, some kind of culture change? What are you really excited about right now in terms of the work that you're doing at the Wrench in Winnipeg?
The work that we're doing at the Wrench, the Wrench is like what we do is we help build up skill in people to be able to repair and ride bikes. And we do that in an accessible way. And we divert bikes from the waste stream. So we process and redistribute 3,500, 4,000 bikes a year. And we're good at it. You know, we do a really good job of that. And the idea is that there is a learning curve, because it's harder than people think. To like keep bikes have been around a long time, but they're like still finicky, and they break down, and then you don't want to ride them anymore because they're unreliable.
I gotta tell you, Lucas, I once had, because I have 4 children, I once had 9 bicycles in the garage, none of which worked. So
That's
I got
right.
this idea that I was going to take them all apart
Uh-huh.
and then cobble at least 5 bikes back together from the parts. Well, I'll tell you, not one of those bikes ever got ridden again. Once they were apart, I couldn't get them back together again.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm hearing you on the skill front there.
Yeah. So there's some basic stuff, and there's some intermediate level stuff and advanced stuff, and it's just a matter of like somebody showing you how to do it, but it's not always intuitive, and there's some techniques that make things easier than, you know. So it's worth having somebody show you how to do that. So
Well,
that's
you're
what
building confidence and competency there too.
Yeah.
Like to not just be out on your own, unable to help yourself if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
isn't as good a feeling as having some skills and some competency around it.
So
Yeah.
Lucas, the Wrench has traditionally been a funded nonprofit. You came to it with a long career in the social enterprise sector. How can the Wrench, leaning into some more entrepreneurial tools, help more people jump on their bikes and experience those mental health and financial benefits?
That's a great question. And we were having that question this morning with the senior staff. The Wrench has been the beneficiary of some substantial funding arrangements for a while, and those are ending. And so I've been busy preparing preparing the Wrench to be able to transition into something that is a little more sustainable under our own steam. And so like, and the challenge of a social entrepreneur is to be able to do that in a sustainable way that gets at our mission objectives. And in this case, it's to get as many people out on the road, and empower as many people to make cycling like their first choice for getting around. So it really involves us like refining our offerings and then marketing them in a way that it's accessible to the general public. The staff is really lamenting we are feeling a loss at the moment, and this is the challenge with the nonprofit model. When you rely on grants, is that they can get turned off, and we are going to be able to reach as many people as we can sustainably reach. And if we get more support, we can reach further back. If we don't get support, then we can't go as far back into the. We can make things affordable, deeply affordable, or free, but we can't. We need support to do so. There's nothing free about giving something away for free. It just means that like we got somebody else paid for it, allowing the end user to have it for free. So we're balancing that. I was explaining what my job is, the basics of the job is to make it so that we can have our impact happen as best as possible, and have us around tomorrow to fight a good fight again. So it's a balance.
So how many Peters are there out there with 9 bikes not working? And he's frustrated because he wants the bike, he wants his kids to bike. In the future, how do you see social enterprises? Is there any way they can offer services such that Peter can make a phone call and get those 9 bikes on the road?
I am check back with me in 3 months.
We might just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we just might.
Yeah. And because we want to be able to do that too. People need to have confidence in order to make the switch. right? And so there's a couple of things that need to happen. People, and some of it is real, and some of it is just like perception or fear, right? And there's different strategies to get around that. If you need somebody to show you how to do something, that's a real thing, and you can seek out that knowledge. If you haven't ridden your bike around in the past while, because last time you did it, it was scary, right? We would like, there's ways to like handle that as well. Some of that is skill building. Some of that is just being open to a second attempt, and going at it like that. And the system also needs to accommodate that, right? There's lots of very like affordable ways to make cycling safer within cities, and it is something we really, really should be doing.
I'll put to you, Lucas, the same question I put to Cathy, and that is in contemplation of where you are and where your crew is right now and the things that you're working on. I know you're involved in a little bit of advocacy and lobbying too. What is it that you would like, want, or need from the community to support your work?
It's very interesting. I'm relatively new coming in to like a very well established movement, and I would describe it as a movement. It's been going on quite a long time. People with lots of passion and lots of experience. My sense is that they've gone as far as they're going to go, given their current tactics for inviting and being inclusive. And I believe it's because people are speaking to others and trying to address issues by like naming positions, and because they're telling people that they're wrong, and they're not speaking to people's identities, right? When I go, if I have never biked, in my life to work, or whatever, because I'm not a cyclist, like the label cyclist, it gets in the way of people attempting to like get from their home to their work using a bicycle, because that's what cyclists are. And I'm not a cyclist, right? So the labels get in the way. Or at least
I identify more as an ambler on two wheels.
But you might identify like it doesn't like it doesn't really matter. What we're looking to do is to make it so that people can use bikes more often in their life. Make it a higher level choice for getting from where you are to where you want to go. And so the labels we can also use that to our advantage. Like Peter, you might consider yourself to be a health conscious person.
You
might.
It's a long shot.
It's a long shot, right? You may consider yourself to be an environmentalist. You may consider yourself to be like a frugal person, right? And
also a long shot.
Yeah, or maybe like a person who like who's able to like do some math and figured out that they could get a $4 an hour raise if they can make this aspect work. Right. Or maybe like you would say you're like an outdoorsy guy, but like all of those things can mean that you can ride a bike from where you are to where you want to go. And you don't have to be a cyclist. You don't have to wear Lycra, right? You can like also ride with one hand and like drink coffee while you're doing it. And
that's definitely a developed skill though, right? There's got to be workshops for that, I think.
There for sure is. And yeah, that's just called comfy getting around. That happens,
There we go, comfy getting around.
Comfy getting around, and so I think the labels get in the way, and I would like the cycling community to like just get over themselves and start inviting new people in. The people who are cyclists and identify as a cyclist, that's part of their identity. They're already in. We got it.
Right.
Right. We're looking for people who are like, who want to use the right tool for the right job, for going to the grocery store to get a jug of milk. Right. You don't need to take your F-150. That is overkill for that specific task.
And light all that gas on fire.
And lighting 80 liters of got on fire at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
Okay,
all
so I'm hearing
kinds of
sort of
things.
expand the circle and invite people in. Sean, you got a question? We gotta wrap up quickly. I got one more too.
Well, I was actually just wanting to connect Cathy into the conversation, because I think, Peter, every week we listen here and engage with guests at Axiom News Live. And you think, what the heck does Cathy in Michigan have in common with Lucas working on bikes in Winnipeg? But they're both talking the same language, and looking forward to connecting.
Yeah, Cathy, I heard a lot of analogies.
Yes. Well, I was sitting here thinking, we're currently bike shopping because we have about 4 of those bikes that need fixing. And there's sticker shock. Bikes are expensive if you want to get something that's going to hold up. So I'm thinking, how can we use our community to help get bikes into more people's hands? And I think you've got a solution there, Lucas, with making used bikes more affordable and still good.
And Cathy, you said earlier you're rallying people around a common idea and just meeting people as humans. Lucas is saying, we need to have less divisive tactics and more invitations to people who aren't part of the community. And I think you're taking very similar approaches in very different contexts.
Well, I applaud you, Cathy, for it. Sounds like some of your tactics involve like going to specific people, and like trying to bring them in and having those like tight conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. Lots of our tactics, I would say, is like demonstration stuff. So like I show up places and I bring my helmet in and I plunk it on the table, and I'm like, and it's not a big deal, and we make sure that we do lots of like family events where we'll have like family rides, and just demonstration stuff. So it's important when I ride, it's important that I wear jeans and that I wear like a sweater or something, that I look really comfy, and also that I can have a cup of coffee. I want people to, as I'm riding down the road, I want people to see that.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of a couple things. One is, in order to have a family ride, you need to have a bike. So how can we get bikes into, to make sure everybody who wants a bike has a bike? And I think that would be a great community idea to, get people together and help solve that. How do we do that? Yeah. And then the other thing I'm thinking of is, I've ridden in cars with people that swear at bikers because, oh, look at them, they're taking up so much of the road, or I have to wait for them because, they have the right of way or whatever. How can we make people, but how can the road be more friendly to bikers?
That's a great question. In Canada, bikes have always been allowed on the road. Like, just like always, that's always been like the law. I hope that drivers as like a group don't see one cyclist and like talk about how they hate all bikers. They hate all cyclists. I know it happens all the time. I mean, it happens in reverse too, because people are cycling, like something dangerous will happen with a driver, and they're like, oh, I hate all drivers. So people need to understand that we're in this together, and it's important that we don't like paint everybody with the same brush all the time. Yeah,
Well, I think there's a culture question too. I think you've touched on that, Lucas. There's a bike culture, or at least a perceived bike culture. And what I'm hearing from both you, Lucas, and Cathy, and Sean, you've pointed in this direction. Like there's something thematic in both of your works in the world around invitation. You're breaking through boundaries, breaking through perceptions, and you're inviting folks into relationships based on why, for example, is cycling important to you, or what's important to you in the community. You're connecting on that and what people are capable of doing together, rather than sort of, as you said, Sean, punting all of our attention to what I consider to be a political circus. Like what we're doing knee to knee, 9 inches apart, is more powerful than probably any kind of community action that we could take.
Well, and Lucas, in his context, is diverting the conversation away from cyclists versus motorists and saying this is another option for transportation. And
and I would love to have a conversation about traffic.
So maybe I could pitch a community summit like what Cathy is hosting, Lucas, around I don't know what you're calling questions. Maybe you don't want to run straight at cycling, but active transportation and how that can restructure our lives, address questions like affordability and housing, health and well-being. I also want to put a pitch in for because I think about my bike story and how I had all those bikes. And Sean, you mentioned this earlier. How many bikes are in garages that aren't being used, and how many people need bikes? Charles Eisenstein has this great process called a gifts and offering circle, in which community members say something they would like, want, or need from the community. And I might say a bike, and be surprised how many times someone in the circle has a bike they're willing to let go. So some food for thought there. Maybe just a couple words from each of you, if you'd like. Perhaps what meaning was made for you, or what you're leaving our conversation with, and then we'll just bring ourselves to a close. Lucas, would you be willing to get us started?
Sure. I think that there's a lot of commonalities between Cathy, how you're approaching things, and I think it's that meeting people with, whether you need to frame it as nonpartisan or not, just like as issues that reasonable people can agree on, are real things, and that would be good to work on, right? and that going from a place of acknowledging that people have real problems, and that there are solutions to those things, and we just need to be creative about it. And you're not naming your party, or you're not making it political in that sense. Is removing the urge to label. So I like that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Removing the urge to label. Thanks, Lucas. Cathy, what's percolating for you as we close?
I think the reasons for neighbors to get together to think about the possibilities are limitless. I mean, think about bicycles. That's one idea. There's a million ideas out there that can bring people together. And I just think we need to model that process of coming together and finding the common good, and then let them go to work and do it.
I love it. I love it. And Sean?
Well, every week, Peter, 2 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays, it's become the highlight of my week. I just feel great after being reminded of how a human-centered approach can help us create the world that we all want to live in. And just so glad to have Axiom playing that convening role.
Right on. Okay. Well, with that, I think we'll call our time complete. Thank you, Lucas and Cathy and Sean, for sharing some of your story. I know it's 20 minutes can only be a snapshot of where things are at now, but it can feel the heartfelt intention that you have to contribute to community, and the work that you're doing in the world is definitely aiding us in cultivating the communities that we'd all love to live into. So thank you
Thank you
very much.
Great
You're
to be with
welcome.
you.
All right. And with that, our time has come to completion. In upcoming weeks, I have a feeling that we're going to have a few guests that will speak about their work in journalism, especially generative journalism, and its capacity to cultivate the communities and worlds we'd like to inhabit and to activate the common good, as Cathy has been saying today. And quite possibly also the founding of a school for the common good. So hopefully we'll have a few guests to speak about some of those things in coming weeks. Join us again next Thursday at 2 o'clock ET, or 7 in the UK, 7 p.m. that is. In the meantime, you can subscribe below and find us at axiomnews.com on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm your host, Peter Pula. Thanks for listening.